All right, folks, we are back. Welcome back to the Kaiju Lounge. I spent so much of that time getting my notes together, and then immediately they all fell behind the one window I needed them for. Naturally, guys, my guest at this time is a prominent figure, no, dare I say, luminary in the competitive Smash community. He has worked events like CEO, Evo, and is the founder of Rise and Grind. Please welcome to the show my guest tonight, Cagt. Cagt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm super, super excited to be here.
Fantastic, excited to have you. This is great. I told you off the show. I think I've even mentioned this on the show. I make no bones about where my expertise is rise and fall. But like Smash is something I've always enjoyed as a casual fan. But I know esports, the fighting game community and the Smash community especially is something incredibly special. We're going to get into all that. I'm excited to get into all this. But
Yep,
we're going to
yep.
kind of start at the beginning with you. Um, you were born and raised in France, correct?
That's correct. Born and raised in Paris, and I lived in France until I was about 9 years old, and then had to move to the US because of my dad's shop at the time. So I've been living here since I think about 2006, but I've been going back to France like every now and then, like every summer basically, to see my brother and see all my childhood friends.
Great. Uh, you're old enough that you don't have to stay. I mean, like we know where this country's going. Like I'm just saying. Like I mean, not that I'm asking you to leave, but I recognize that that you've hit a certain point now, and you're still here by choice.
That's that's okay. That's actually true. I've for the longest time I've wanted to go back to France because I'm like, oh my god, I hate it here. I miss my friends. I'm like, I miss my brother. I was like, why am I here, mom, dad? Like, I want to go back to France. And like, by the time I got to college, it was like, it got to a point where I was like, all right, I've been here long enough. Like, my parents want me to go to college. I've learned English. I've gotten friends here. Like, I've gone through all the trouble. I was like, all right, fine. I'll give it a chance, and then I'll go and get a job in France, and then whatever. And then here I am, 15 years later, still here. I'm like, well, shit. Okay, you guys got me.
It's like a bear trap. It's easy to get into, but hard to leave.
Mhm.
So let's go. So let's get into the Smash stuff. So like a
Right, right.
lot of us, I mean, I'm assuming you started off as simply just a fan. What was the first game within the series that like got you hooked into it?
So I've played Smash my whole life casually. I remember growing up with my brother playing Smash on the N64. Got a GameCube and played Melee, Brawl, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really got into I got into the competitive scene in 2015 through Smash 4. I followed it a little bit before that. Like I would watch like Evo and Apex and whatnot, but I was in middle school, high school. I didn't, my parents didn't let me go to like tournaments or anything because they're like, oh, there's a bunch of strangers, you don't know them, yada yada yada. Which like, fair enough, but I see all these like 15, 16-year-old prodigies, and I'm like, bro, I wish that was
Could
me.
have been you. Could have
Um,
been you, right?
right.
Like,
But yeah, I joined the community. I was just a player like everyone else, right? Playing the game, going to weeklies and whatnot. And over time, I really wanted to learn more about how events worked, and I wanted to like help out a little bit. I wanted to just simple stuff, right? Just like help, like set up consoles and whatnot. And then things snowballed over time to where it's like I really, really got a liking for running events, and I was like, wait, I kind of want to do this full time. And it like I there was a crescendo that hit back in like 2018 where I was in college studying computer networking,
okay.
and I was in my junior year, and my grades were going way down here, but my esports like love went like all the way up here. But I didn't tell anything to my parents. So one day, a week before Christmas, I get an email from my college saying that I got kicked out because I had a shit GPA.
Oh no.
So I went down to the living room. I'm like, "Hey, mom, dad, so I'm not in college anymore." So that was a conversation and a half.
Wow.
But they're like, look, we'll give you time to like figure your life out, and like we'll let you do some esports stuff, but like you need to go back to college eventually because they're really big on like your studies, your degree, and whatnot.
Right.
But I put so much time into esports. I was in like survival mode basically, and it motivated me so hard to like work really hard, work all these events, and it got to where I am today, where I'm able to do this full time. So it's been a hell of a journey, man. Like a one crazy, crazy journey.
How are your parents taking it now? This one thing that like, I mean, because there's always an element of, when your job is something that an older generation did not have around, there's always a risk, right? I mean, like, I imagine there's all the ranges of possibilities. Your parents could treat it like, wow, look, this is a new field. You're at the forefront of something that's awesome. Or they can think you might as well be in the porn industry. Like, I feel like it's like one or the other, right? Like, how now that you are making money, now that you are actually kind of like being successful in this field, how are they taking that? Like, do they view gaming differently, or is it truly out of their wheelhouse?
In the beginning, they were pretty hesitant, and they're like, I don't know, it's just a hobby. You're just doing this for fun, blah 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 blah. It's like a very long time to like actually convince them. I'm like, no, I can do this as a full-time job and as a career. And nowadays, they're very understanding. They're very supportive. They actually came to Rise and Grind both years, which was really really amazing.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. They
they're
play?
still a little. No, they don't. They're just they're spectators. There's still a little bit of like explain. Like I still have to explain to them how stuff works in the community and whatnot. But like they've been now they're very supportive. But it took a very long time. Like I for a while, like my dad. I don't want to say didn't respect me, but it's such a new concept to him that he didn't understand that you could make money from video games. And
Yeah.
he was like, "Well, don't you need a degree? Don't you need to go to college? Don't you need a 9 to 5?" And I was like, "No, like you can do contract work, you can travel all the time, yada yada yada." So I think it just came from a place of like just genuinely not knowing about it, more so than them not respecting my passion, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense too, right? It's like because in the early stages when you're not making as much money or maybe not living on your own, it's like you don't have the proof to show them what it could be yet, and
Yeah.
they're not gonna Google search it. I can barely get my dad to get off his flip phone. Like that's just like
Yeah.
that's just a generational thing that's gonna happen. So but it sounds like they've accepted it. They've gone on.
They have, yeah.
You know, both your family all being from Paris originally. Does gaming in general kind of have a similar stigma in both the U.S. and Paris that you've seen? Like, is it because I mean I'm gonna age myself here. I'm a child of the '80s, and like there was definitely even in high school it still wasn't in like the early '90s, late 2000, late
Hmm.
'90s, early 2000s still wasn't
Hmm.
cool to be a gamer, and now I think it is very
Right.
different. But like, has that trajectory matched overseas as well, or is it like a little more acceptable? Is it a little less acceptable?
I think France views esports in a much better light because obviously it's France is a lot smaller than the U.S.
Hmm.
But there's been such a massive push and a massive rise in esports that there's been a lot more support overall, like especially from the government. Like I'm not saying the government like funds all of our events or anything, but
Right.
there's been a lot more recognition on a national scale, and there's a lot of growing infrastructure, and socially I think it's become more acceptable. That being said, they still struggle with a lot of the same issues that we have in the US, where like you said, people still see it as a hobby. They don't really understand gaming or the younger crowd and whatnot. So it's got its pros and cons. But at least I think it's just gonna take a long time for the older generation to really understand that. Like, I mean, it's the same thing of like I feel like it's the same thing with the music industry, right? Like, but back when like rock and roll and rap and all these like new genres came up, like nobody respected them. But nowadays, it's like, yeah, if you like, there's famous rappers, rock bands, and whatnot. Like, I think we're just going through like such a massive cultural innovation that it's just gonna take a couple generations to really settle in and be like fully accepted.
Right. You kind of you either die the hero or live long enough to tell kids to get off your lawn. It's kind of
Exactly.
I think
Yep.
what is
Yep.
happening. Is it do you is France more akin, or even Europe in general, more akin to say how Korea views esports, where it does seem to be very widely popular there, or does it still feel close to the American side where it feels niche? Like it's obviously accepted. There's money and there's good money at the high levels, but it still doesn't. the mainstream still doesn't quite understand it yet.
I would say definitely close to the US. Like I would love it if France or the US or any other country got to Korea's level where like we have like dedicated channels for gaming. We have like, you know, like you look at Faker for example. He's like a national phenomenon in Korea. Like would love if we got to that point where like the general media doesn't like look down on us, or like we don't have to
Yeah.
like the way I see it is like if I go to a family dinner or family reunion, I could just tell them, "Oh yeah, I work in esports," and they get it, or they at least respect it. But like I still like have to like not hide what I do per se, but I have to like dumb it down for people. They're like, "Oh, I'm an event organizer," or like, "Oh, I travel for work," or like something very simple. I can't quite tell them like, "Oh yeah, I host Super Smash Brothers tournaments," because like what's Super Smash Brothers? Wait, video games. Isn't that the thing with Pikachu? Can you make
Right.
money? Blah blah blah. Oh, my little brother plays with Link every like no, that's not what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
The more details you add, the more you have to answer, and it just becomes a nightmare.
Exactly that, yeah. I'm like the less you know the better.
Well, so let's talk about what you're doing now. So like you've
Mhm.
I looking at your resume, it's a laundry list of some of the biggest sort of names and organizations in esports and in gaming. But like the biggest thing it sounds like on your plate right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Rise and Grind. Tell us a bit about what Rise and Grind is.
That's correct. So Rise and Grind is my flagship major that I founded August of last year. It's a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Melee, and also added Street Fighter and Guilty Gear this year. Um, the idea behind Rise and Grind is like I wanted to basically represent all the years of hard work and dedication that I've put on in Smash into my own event. You know, I'm used to always being a contractor. I'm used to being the guy that people contact to run other people's events, but
Hmm.
I've never had an event of my own that I could say this is like my baby. And like last year, like going off of COVID, I was like, look, I've worked really hard for years. I've got all these connections, you know. I want to try to put on my own show and put my own twist on these events from having worked with so many different people and having seen so many different perspectives. And that's what Rise and Grind is about. Is like, look, not only can I also be on that level, but I can also kind of give motivation to other organizers that are growing and say, hey, you also could maybe one day get to this level if you work really hard enough and, you know, really push yourself to that. Now, it's not something that I recommend to everyone because that shit's expensive. It's been a really big passion project, and it's a dream come true really for it to come to happen. So I'm yeah, it's my biggest project by far.
So, so how do you approach something like this, right? Like I imagine the first step is just looking at an empty Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper
Yeah.
and figuring out the fuck do I do from here? Like how do you go from an idea written on a napkin per se into an event of this scale?
So, I mean, it's basically like you said, right? Like you're like, all right, because when we so like, let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The way that Rise and Grind started, or that came to be, was from a 3 a.m. Discord call with one of my best friends at the time, Kyle. We literally were just sitting in a call, and we basically had found this venue in Waco, Texas, the Waco Convention Center, and we're like, oh damn, this looks like a dope venue. It looks affordable, blah blah blah. But we just kind of passed it off. I was like, maybe one day we'll do something there. And we just started like kind of like, you know, shooting the shit and like, hey man, wouldn't it be cool if we like had an event where we could do like XYZ? Man, wouldn't it be cool if we could work with like all these people? And we just started like putting together like a document of like hypotheticals. And then we're like, wait, don't we technically have a major right now? And I'm like, no shot. Like, there's no way. Like, no. We're this is it's 3 a.m. Like, we're literally two random dudes. Like, there's no way. This is not real. And so we kind of like played with the idea here and there. Like, I would message a few people like, hey, like in theory, if we were to do an event, would you support us? Would you supply consoles? Would you do this? And I thought it wasn't gonna get anywhere. And within the span of like 2, 3 weeks, we've got so much like positive reception and support from people like behind the scenes that we're like, oh shit, wait, maybe we do have something. And we just said, fuck it, let's just go for it. Whatever happens, happens. We launched the event and it was a resounding success. And we're like, well, I guess we have a major now. So
Wow. That's awesome. So you've done two so far here, and both have come out pretty
yeah.
well.
Yeah, 2022, 2023.
Wow. And this is also coming off like pandemic too.
Mhm.
I mean, I imagine that was already tough for the industry because everything had to move online, but like
Mhm.
starting something new post pandemic,
Mhm.
when there's already other established stuff out there, did that feel, was there like an extra layer of struggle with that, or did you find it was easier because people were like ready to get back into person?
So I think immediately off of the pandemic, it was, I don't want to say easy, but it was definitely a lot easier to host an event because like everyone was so hungry for events, right?
Hmm.
But I think for me, the way that it helped Rise and Grind, get off the ground is because a big part of my career, weirdly enough, is thanks to the pandemic. So before COVID, I was still like a TO and I would organize events, but it was more like local events or like regional events. And I
Hmm.
was only just getting to that like national level. And then COVID shut everything down. And I was like, well, shit, okay, there goes my career. And as the online events like blew up and we had like thousands of entrants every single day, there wasn't really a lot of people that were willing to like make the dive and like really figure out how to run these events efficiently or keep the community alive. And so I was like, look, I'm not going to sit on my ass for 2 years wondering what the hell I'm going to do. I don't want to put everything I've worked so hard on to waste. So I just dived headfirst into the online era and I was like, let me just figure out how to run an online tournament and kind of take that mantle. And
Hmm.
so I carried that momentum from running all these online events into offline and say, hey, I can also do offline events, by the way. And because I had built that rapport with the community, it really helped me kick off Rising Ground because like, oh shit, Cagt is his own major now. Let's go support it. And that's how things came to be.
That's great. That's awesome. The online stuff. What are, and again, here I am coming in as a full noob here. Like, what are the
Mhm.
mechanics of running an online tournament? Like, obviously, when you're in person, there are
Mhm.
eyes, there are people
Yeah.
there to be able to watch. Like, does everything have to be streamed so that there's like given proof? Is there like what are the mechanics or extra layers of, I guess, security, for lack of a better term, that have to be
Mhm.
run in an online tournament versus an in-person offline tournament?
So the obviously the biggest thing is with online events is like you don't have 1,000 people in a room, which sounds obvious to people. Like obviously yes, but the biggest thing is because you don't have those 1,000 people in a room, you can't control a lot of what can happen. A lot of these people are like at home, they're on Discord, they're on Twitter, they're streaming, there's whatever. So you have to keep your eyes in a million places at once, and it's a lot harder to make an online tournament feel like an actual event because it's like, well, I could just play my matches and then once I'm out of the tournament, I just click out of the tab and go do whatever. So it's
Yeah,
much harder to kind of foster like a community and say like, hey, we're here for this online tournament. We're here to celebrate. We're here to keep ourselves busy. It's it's that social aspect that's missing that's really really hard to replace, and so we have to find ways to basically make up for that, to either make the tournament really dope, to add a lot of prizing, maybe a lot of like cool, like I don't know, events on stream. There's a lot of ways that we basically have to get really really creative. And it was just a way for us to hold on during the pandemic and say, look, I know we're all at home, I know it kind of sucks right now, but like we're still a community, we still support each other, let's push through this as one unit.
that's great. That's great, and it's just a wonderful example of like how that level of ingenuity could help bring gaming is supposed to be something that's positive, and like I'll be the first one to shit on whoever does something wrong in the industry on the show nonstop.
Oh
But
yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
but like in the end, gaming is meant to be a net positive in our lives, and at that
Mhm,
time, it was a time waster while we were all stuck at home. To so be able to
mhm.
still build community using it is honestly, I commend you. Incredibly impressive during that time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And so back to Rise and Grind. When roughly in the year does Rise and Grind happen?
So, we had it in August for the first year and October the second, purely because the venue wasn't available. But we're
Mm,
looking to be a consistent August stop every year.
great. All right. So uh, with it coming in August,
Mhm.
you are obviously now subject to the restrictions Nintendo is putting in place. I believe November
Yo.
15th is the day.
Yeah.
I only have a small. I'm going to just read a small list of some of the stuff here. I know there's plenty more, um, but I believe these new guidelines. Smash tournaments are limited to 200 participants. You can't set prizes above $5,000. Unable to have sponsors. You can't use modified version of games. I believe you can't charge more than $20 per enter. Like there are a lot
Yeah.
of stuff on here. How like what are the let's I mean I could go we could go through the rules one by one, but then we'd be here all
Mhm.
night. What
Right, right.
are the rules specifically that I think affect you with relation to Rise and Grind, and what are the ones, if they're not the same thing, that you feel like are the biggest offenders, the worst problems here that Nintendo has set forth?
So the biggest thing with these guidelines, and I think the scariest part was that these came out like completely unannounced, right? Like none of us knew this was coming. There was no prior announcement. None of us were warned. It was just like, here you go, guidelines. And we're like, oh shit.
They throw this out there in less than a month, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, these tournaments take
Mhm.
far longer than a
Oh
month
yeah.
to put
Oh
together.
yeah. Way they take it's like upwards of a year even to like fully plan out and develop. So it was definitely really scary, but after like really kind of like processing it and talking with people and really looking into the finer details, the guidelines essentially mainly apply to the smaller events, right? Like your local events, the guys that like in the card shops and whatnot. If you're looking to go at a at like a bigger scale, that's when licenses come in, and you have to apply for a Nintendo license. And then when you apply for that license, you can essentially contest some of the given guidelines and say, well, I can't charge $20. I need to charge 60, 70, $80. Or like, I'm obviously going to have more than $5,000 in pricing. Are you okay with that? And so it's just about having I said that conversation with Nintendo, just getting the approval from Nintendo essentially.
Hmm.
But the biggest question mark right now for organizers is we don't know when the application process is coming out. Like they said early November, but we are in early November.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't know exactly what having the license entails. How much can we adjust based on having the license? Like, is it a 1 year license? Is it a one-time license? Like, there's still a lot of details that's like unknown. So I'm not explicitly worried because of the guidelines. I just need to know, like, okay, how much leeway can we actually get by getting a license from Nintendo? And once I have that information, then I can figure out, okay, can I still make my event happen? Do I have to adhere to Nintendo? Can I,
Mm.
what's gonna change? Especially like, like for Ultimate at least, we're the newest game, we're on Nintendo Switch. That I think there's a lot more freedom. But I'm thinking for like an older game like Melee, where they're running, they have their own community rules and they have their own culture around how to run these Melee tournaments. How are they gonna play with Nintendo? Is Nintendo gonna be cool with all these different modifications and whatnot? Do we have to go to like pure vanilla Melee? Like, there's a lot of questions really.
Right. So the license thing, I assume the guidelines were new. The idea of having a license in the first place, is that also a new thing that wasn't around before?
So events having a license is not new. There has been a few bigger majors that have had Nintendo licenses,
Hmm.
but usually you've had to kind of like contact Nintendo separately or have a contact there that you can talk to and get approval from Nintendo, but it wasn't required. It was more of like, I think it's really once you reached a certain threshold of like once your major got big enough to where it really got Nintendo's attention, then you needed to have that conversation. But most events didn't need to have that conversation beforehand.
Got
Now
it.
it seems like almost everyone who wants to organize anything more than like 20 people has to go through Nintendo to get a license.
Got it. Okay. So you anticipate having to go through getting a license for Rise and Grind,
Yeah.
big enough venue, and then hopefully you can be able to bypass all these things. Because yeah, getting a venue, like getting any convention center in general, like they're huge. They're
Yeah.
big. They're
Oh yeah,
big
they are.
spaces, and they cost a lot. Um,
Mhm.
for these smaller guys, and you having done more local stuff prior to your work now, like
Mhm.
what does this mean there when it's your small local towny tournament? Like,
Mhm.
does this put a damper on growth, on people being able to either make a career out of this and slide
Mhm.
through, or being able to slowly grow from a town tournament to a city tournament and kind of expand that way.
I, truthfully speaking, I don't think that these guidelines will necessarily like kill weekly like local events because there's so many happening every day. It's impossible for Nintendo to like keep track of everything and try to like
Fair.
police all of them. Like you can't do that. I think it's meant I don't want to say as a scare factor, but I think it's meant for Nintendo to protect themselves because I think what they're probably afraid of is like, let's say there's a local tournament that happens that has like Nintendo's branding on it or like something Nintendo related, right? Imagine like a local town organizer who doesn't really understand the legalities and the logistics behind it, does something really stupid, some news media makes an article about it, it blows up, and now somehow, some way, Nintendo gets dragged into like, hey, how did you allow this when they had no idea it happened in the first place? That's
Right.
my guess as to why they're putting their foot down. But at the same time, a lot of these organizers, like, we understand obviously the implications of running a Smash tournament, and we know to be careful and not do anything stupid. We just want that liberty and that freedom from Nintendo to be able to host these tournaments for our favorite games.
Hmm.
And we don't want Nintendo to intrude on our community and take away from everything that we've built. So it's really a fine line of like, I want to keep doing what I love,
Yeah.
but also Nintendo's like, well, I don't want you to like ruin my game. So it's a very weird relationship, and I
I
think most people won't have to interact with Nintendo, but obviously I completely understand the worry and the anxiousness of like, well, what if Nintendo shuts down my tournament, you know?
Yeah, and I think that does make sense on one hand, but then I also think about like with regards to IP protection, uh,
Yeah.
like you know you don't see I don't feel like you see Capcom doing this for
Yeah.
Street Fighter or Bandai Namco doing this for Tekken
Yeah.
tournaments, right? Like this does seem to be Nintendo specific. Nintendo also has a history of shutting down fan projects in a way that others
Yep.
don't. And
Yep.
like I know from just common discourse, and I want to get dive into a bit of this more, that
Hmm.
Nintendo, for having one of the arguably best esport fighting games out there, have been
Hmm.
notoriously awful at supporting their own fighting game
Yeah.
community. Like,
Yeah.
why? Talk a little bit about that aspect of Nintendo, and like, why do you think that is?
I I mean, I don't, dude. I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I look at Capcom, I look at Bandai, I look at all these other companies that like have these huge pro tours. They put all this money down, advertising. It's great. But then Nintendo's just like, we don't. Not only do we not care about you, but we actively go after you if you don't
Yeah,
present the game in the way that they built it. And I'm just like, dude, this is free advertising. Like, we love the game so much that we're spending thousands and thousands of hours and dollars and time to basically push the game that we love that you made. And we don't, even if you don't like support us and even if you don't give us money, at least let us love your game. Let us play the game the way that we want to,
yeah,
right? Like, we want to bring more people into our community so that they can buy your game and so that they can enjoy your game. That's the whole point of this. We want to share our passion. So I don't understand why Nintendo has a history of like shutting down events, shutting down fan projects, shutting down mods, like putting all these stipulations down. I'm like, like I like, yes, we can sit here and talk about the legalities, IP protection, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, it's like these are your fans, and they're not. We're not trying to kill your game. If anything, I would argue that the Smash community has grown the game immensely on its own.
God,
So
yes.
like, I don't understand why you wouldn't like at least support that or respect that and say, hey, you guys have put so much into our game. Let's give you guys some love back. I don't understand. And I know there's obviously a difference in culture between like Nintendo of Japan, Nintendo of America, Nintendo of Europe, etc. But my dream is like I would love to have a conversation with whoever the higher up is in charge of all this and be like, look, man, just let me play the fucking game, bro. Like, come
It's
on, like,
you'd think for a company that has gone out of the way to come up with the most ridiculous ways to play games,
mhm.
dual screens, waggling controllers around, and they're being so harsh on how you enjoy their shit. Like,
Right? Like it's like they're like, "Hey, here's this awesome game I made, but you have to play it my way."
right,
It's like
yeah,
when you go to like your friend's house and they're like, "Hey, let's play Smash, but like it's my rule set and I get to use my controller and this you can only use this." Like, dude, it's not fun. Like, let me play who I want. Like
right.
it's the same kind of thing, except now your best friend from down the block is now a multi-billion-dollar corporation who can end your career just like that. It's like, come on.
It's wild. Have you had like direct run-ins or issues with Nintendo towards stuff you've put together or worked on personally?
Uh, Thankfully, like knock on wood, I have not had any direct issues
Yet,
with
yet.
Nintendo yet. So, but I mean, I know a lot of my friends like organizers in the field who have had unfortunate like issues with Nintendo, and I think at this point it's just like people are just scared. I think they're scared. They're worried that like at any point in time, Nintendo can just change their minds and decide I don't like your tournament for
Yeah.
whatever reason. Your tournament is going to be the example for why we have these guidelines, and like we have to kind of live with that. Of like at any point, Nintendo has the right to shut down our event, no matter how hard we try, no matter how much we adhere to their guidelines, which really sucks. But I mean,
Meanwhile,
yeah.
Street Fighter's putting shoutcasters in their game. So like
Literally, like they're putting like $1 million pro tour. You can, like I said, they're in the game. I'm like, dude, how sick would that be if like your favorite commentators would be like, like imagine you
yeah.
pick like Captain Falcon and you hear like TK's voice or something. I don't know. I'm just like throwing examples. It'd just be so cool.
How much we want to be, everyone wants a chance to start to like choose your character. Like yeah.
Right, dude. Oh my, so fun.
What do
But
you
yeah.
think with this? What does the future of Smash as a competitive sport look like? Not just with these rules, but also,
Mhm.
I think Sakurai on his channel recently talked
Mhm.
about how like he is unsure how they could even top Ultimate at that point if there's even
Mhm.
space to make a new game. Like,
Mhm.
where do you see the competitive scene for Smash in the next 5 years? Do you think we would get a new Smash Brothers? Do you think Nintendo will lax up, or are things more dire than that?
I mean, I think the Smash community will always live on in some way, shape, or form. I think the community is too big and too passionate to die. Um, Now, will there be a new Smash game? I don't know. I mean, Ultimate is a pretty massive thing, and
It's
if there
huge.
is a new, like, they might just make like Smash Ultimate Deluxe, kind of like Mario Kart 8. So who knows? But I feel like Smash prints so much money that it would be stupid of them not to make another one, or at least re-release it in some way. Like, that shit makes too much money, bro.
That's kind of my thought too. Honestly, is at a certain point, it's like they have to do one for every console generation because,
Mhm.
quite frankly, like if they don't do it, people will be angry. Like
Yeah,
there's too much money on the table left behind on that.
yeah.
What what would you want to see that you haven't seen yet in the next Smash?
I personally, I would love to see an older Smash game be brought back in a way, either like a remaster or like a port. I know that like obviously Ultimate is like has so many characters and everything, but I think a lot of these older Smash games deserve like a modernized love. And I'm curious to see like we've joked about Melee HD for years, but it's like if they were to make a Melee HD, what would that look like if they were to make Brawl HD, Smash 64 HD? Like, are they gonna stay true to the game, or are they gonna like revamp it? I don't know. That's what I would love to see. Also, I'm a sucker for like Smash 64, so like I would love to be able to play it on the
The original
HDTV.
man, absolutely.
But like I also understand that the community respects the way that the games are, and like there's been like we've seen Smash 64 on like the Wii Virtual Console and whatnot, but it's obviously not the same experience. So I would also understand if Nintendo wants to respect that and not, I guess, take away from what the original was in a way.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Um, as we come to the end here, I feel like I need to ask you. Probably have the best mind for this.
Mhm.
Should Waluigi be in Smash?
I personally, oh God, I might get flamed for this. I personally, I okay, you know what? I
Go for
personally
it.
don't care for Waluigi being in Smash. I'm just gonna say it.
Wow.
I don't care.
Wow.
I think I understand I get it. It's a prominent figure. Wario's in the game. Mario, everyone's in the game. I don't care for Waluigi. I'm just gonna say it. Flame me all you want. Call me out. I don't care for Waluigi. I think there's a lot of much better characters from other franchises that we can add to Smash that would be a much like my personal wish for Smash is Rayman. I would fucking love to have
Boom.
Rayman in
Thank
Smash.
you. Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a new Rayman game in general. I fucking love that shit. But like, yes, 1,000%, and especially now that we just got him as DLC in Sparks of Hope. Like they got the working relationship with Ubisoft. There's no reason not to bring Rayman to that game. It just seems like he's got a body built for Smash Brothers.
Like it's like, and he's already in Brawlhalla, I believe.
Yeah.
And like I grew up with Rayman 2 as a kid on the N64. I was like, that shit was so good. So like I would love to see Rayman in Smash.
Honestly, better answer than Waluigi. I love it. I will back
Yep.
you up when you get flamed online.
I appreciate it.
No worries. All right. So, Cagt, where can everyone find you? Last little bit here. Talk about Rise and Grind. Talk about what you're working on. Let the people know what you're all about.
Look, man. So we've got Rise and Grind coming next year, August 16 to 18 of 2024. You can follow me on Twitter at CAGT3000, and you can also check out my website, cact.gg. Follow me, check out the stuff that I do. If you watch an Ultimate Major in the coming weeks, months, you'll probably see me there. And if you're trying to get into the community in any way, shape, or form, hit me up. I'll be more than happy to get you guys into it.
Perfect. I'll be honest. I am a new dad. I don't know what my life looks like, but if I can make it down to Texas around then, you just as a spectator, I'll try to swing by. It sounds like a good fucking time for sure.
I'd love to have you, man. Definitely let me know.
We'll love that. All right, guys. Cagt, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it. We'll be sure to, after this airs, put all the links down in the description below. For everyone else, stick around. We're coming back. We're doing the gameplay portion, playing a little Bang on Balls Chronicles. I feel weird saying that out loud. But that's what we're getting into, guys. Stick around. We will be right back.